culture change, a lot of coaching changes in the Big 12 in the last couple of years. Now, Baylor.
Speaking of robots, head coaches.
Baylor had a big coaching change that I would not say was necessarily a huge culture change from Matt Rule to Dave Aranda, because they're both kind of focused on the player over the program kind of a thing.
In that sense, you had completely different personalities.
But they're not, like, as far as, accountability, like they're similar in that. Like, there wasn't much of a change in, it's not like they went from one coach who expected to be there at 7 a.m., to a coach it's like, whatever you want, guys. You know, like,
come on in, the water's fine.
Yeah, it wasn't that. But big culture changes in other places in the conference. Texas Tech went from Matt Wells, who was someone who is a really good football mind, I think, but was not, there was no excitement about him. He was
very lukewarm.
Yeah, it's just how it was. It was like, and Joey McGuire is the double shot of espresso of human beings. I mean, he just absolutely has so much energy and fired up, and is about not making excuses about things, about, like, here's the, look, okay, yes, it's in West Texas. Can you come and win here? Yes, if you want to come.
Do you want to come and play and win?
Yeah. Do you want to come? Do you want to come play for me? I'm a cool coach. There's going to be cool things happening. It doesn't matter if it's in Lubbock. And it's hard. Like, he's still going to have to fight it because Lubbock's far away from everything. But a cult, like, they believe in themselves. I think that's the biggest difference between last year and this year. Lance Leipold has a team that goes out and is not shocked that they win. They're just like, all right, yeah, we were ready for the game. We won.
He's like, I've won at programs, lesser than what has happened at Kansas. Like, we do forget that Kansas does have a history of some success, albeit it's far back in the minds of even me. I was in, like, 7th grade whenever they were running around going to Orange Bowls and stuff like that. Yeah. But they do have the history of some success in the sport. But he's coming in and saying, look, why can't we win here? Yeah. That doesn't compute to me. I want it Buffalo.
Well, it's not impossible to win anywhere.
True.
It's impossible to win if you refuse to be open about why you're not. And Kansas, for a long time, I think, was just like, oh, well, Charlie Weiss will be fine. Oh, well, this guy will be fine. Like, are those the guys that you really want? Like, Charlie Weiss made millions of dollars on the fact that he coached Tom Brady for a little bit.
Yeah. It's all about the company you keep. Ask any of Sean McVay's friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you shake Sean McVay's hand one time in the restroom?
I wouldn't be working here if I had ever done that.
Yeah.
Be the quarterback's coach for an NFL team, at least.
Yeah. So, culture changes have happened, and nowhere bigger to me than Texas and TCU. Now, Texas has to focus on, and the only thing they can do, that Sark can do, is focus on changing it in the actual locker room and dealing with expectations of a fan base that are astronomical every second of every day.
Right.
You kind of have to just quiet that noise, because you can't there. He had the problem with Texas for a long time was, if you committed to Texas, a lot of the recruits thought that, like, automatically you walked in and got, like, a magical amulet that made you a national champion already, and not realizing that the 05 team was the first team in 30 years to win one at Texas. And
it took Mac Brown a minute to build that up.
It took recruiting and a team that worked really hard to do that. Worked really hard.
And they were the underdog the year they won too.
Yeah. They worked. They had, and look, man, the recruiting was fantastic, especially along the lines. They were 8 deep on the defensive line, and they were 9 deep on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. And then they had Vince Young, who is one of the top 5 college football players of my lifetime. I mean, maybe of all time. He was an amazingly dominant college football player. And if you ask me, hey, you need to start a team, and you get, like, the quarterback, and I might just say it's got to be Vince Young, because that dude was so dominant and so much physically better than everyone else. Now, the NFL game is different. And
everybody is. Everybody is. All of a sudden, everyone is your height, weight, and speed.
But, that was Vince Young. these guys are not that. Like, you might have the same number of stars by your name as Vince Young and Roy Miller and guys like that, but you're not them. You're not those guys.
Yeah.
And you're not Sergio Kindle. You're not those dudes. You're not them. You're not Quan Cosby. You're not Jordan Shipley. You haven't done that yet. You haven't earned those things. And Steve Sarkisian is convincing them that they have to do that. And when they do, holy cow. I mean, like,
when we can officially maximize your potential that we know that you have. That's why we recruited you. That's why you came to the University of Texas, because you're this big-time recruit, because we believe that we can maximize what it is that you do, and then that will be a springboard into bigger and better things in the NFL. In the past, that's why you would come here. But for a minute, it was that. It was the, I've always been good. Why wouldn't I be good? One more level up.
Yeah.
And it was going to take a coach to say, look, we need to do things one type of or a certain way to make sure that this is that you'll be able to do all the things that you think that you can accomplish.
What have you done? Like, you have to keep saying, like, what have you done? Okay, you beat Oklahoma, good. What does that mean? Nothing yet. It just means you beat Oklahoma. So like every season is a big puzzle. And it felt like a lot of times Texas would get a big win and they'd be like, that's it. We're done with the puzzle. And then you walk away, you're like, I don't even know what this is yet. Is this an elephant? Is it a clown? I don't know. But they just walk away, and then, like, we're done. And then they get stomped
Kansas
by
comes
teams.
in and
Kansas beats them. And that's how it is. But I think Steve Sarkisian's changing that a little bit. I really do.
I do want to know what the big sort of, because it looks like he has these players, at least on the offensive side of the ball, bought into this system and whatever Gary Patterson has also brought to that defensive side of the ball. I know he's not the coordinator, but
but Gary Patterson has the perfect job for himself at this point in his life, in my opinion, in that he doesn't really have to deal with the media. He doesn't have to he can't recruit. He's not allowed to recruit. He's not one of those guys. So he doesn't have to deal with that. He doesn't have to deal with people asking him about questions about this or that. He doesn't have to invent a bunch of conspiracy theories. You can be like, all right, we're playing Alabama. Here's the tape. Mm-hmm. Figure out how to stop them. And guess what?
He knows how.
He's darn good at that. And then you can allow the other coaches to do their thing. And consequently, by extension, TCU is a program that, I mean, the whole roster for the most part, aside from a couple transfers, are Gary Patterson's players. Mm-hmm. He built that roster, and he built it pretty well, but they were underachieving for a long time because it was he's just a lot. He's just a lot, man. And because of that, eventually, it's like people who yell at their kids. Like, everyone's going to yell at their kids. But, like, if you really want to make your kid, like, effective, you're like, oh, he yelled at me.
I mean,
like,
Paul Royden, I'm curious because you've hit on a good point. With the way that, the culture is changing in today's youth, do you think Gary Patterson can be a head coach and make a program as good as that TCU one that he had propped up?
I don't think so. I think you have to be like, I think the Dave Arandas of the world are the Jamie Chadwells, who's going to be hopefully a Power 5 head coach in this cycle. I think those guys are the ones. The Jimbo Fisher's having a hard time, right? Jimbo Fisher's wearing all these quarterbacks out. The one who lost one game with him was Jameis Winston. And because Jameis gave as good as he got. Mm-hmm. So, like, Jimbo would yell at Jameis, Jameis would yell right back.
I don't want to be the guy that gets on here and says, like, today's youth is soft. I'm not going to do that. I think that's a non-starter argument. But I do believe that more and more kids today are more in tune with what their belief system is and what they believe to be true, and not for nothing, more in tune with their feelings, which is better for you as a person. But
I do think that there are kids who are, like, not used to, like, yelling all the time is not effective. Yelling once in a while is super effective. Yelling when it counts. And I think with Gary Patterson, it was like everything was a conspiracy theory. Everything was this.
Everything was Matt Foley.
And nothing was his fault, right? Nothing was Gary Patterson's fault. And so because of that, they needed someone to come in who's just coaching them, leading the program. Everything's fine. That's Sonny Dykes. It's fine.
And they talked about it a little when you hit the nail on the head a couple of shows ago. They talked about it a little bit on the broadcast about Max Duggan, how he was so intense and so worked up and so built himself up into a shoot that like he was wound up on the sideline and couldn't play or couldn't focus well enough.
Yeah.
And now he's playing out of his mind, and that has to be just Sonny Dykes sitting him down and being like, we're good. You know what I mean?
Have you ever been on a really peaceful vacation where like you know that nobody can bother you, and then like you're just like, I wish I could put this feeling in a bottle.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on.
As soon as I get back on that plane, it's gonna.
Yeah, I think that's what Max Duggan's feeling right now. Like he like it's fine. It's fine. Like he'd make a bad play and they're down by 3 points, and he would act like, well, that's it. The game's over. I messed it up again. And you're like, well, no, man, you got another drive. Like, if the defense stops them, like there was just so much. And, also with TCU the last couple of years, the defense, which is what Gary Patterson is good at,
was not good.
Was not good. So it's what Jimbo Fisher's going to have to face over the next couple of years at A&M. If that offense doesn't get better, they're like, yeah, you're recruiting well. You're doing all this, but the one thing that you're supposed to be the guru at is over. So you need to adjust what you're doing because, the great coaches, the great ones, the Sabans of the world are the ones who constantly adjust.
We talked about it last week too. I mean, Saban was all of a sudden, he was running a 20th century offense, and he was winning a little bit. I mean, they won the national championship in 2009? Was that the first one?
Yeah.
And they continued that offense for a couple more years, and it was successful. But then all of a sudden, he's getting left behind. They're losing a couple of games. Now all of a sudden, he brings in Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
He brings in Sarkisian, his school of rehabilitated toys or whatever, and it just rehabilitated coaches, and so he was able to adjust, and now they were world beaters for the better half of the 2010s. So like Jimbo Fisher and company and people of his ilk have to look themselves in the mirror and decide if there are changes to be made. Like Aranda, who was like, hey, this play calling thing ain't working that well. Can we bring somebody else in? And he fired an offensive coordinator the first year.
Yeah. And admitted that this isn't working. This is not a fit. Go ahead and move on. Steve Sarkisian is a guy who's not holding on as tight to the leash as Tom Herman was.
Right.
Tom Herman's a good football coach when it comes to game plans and all that stuff. He was not the guy for Texas because he cannot put the filter on the outside noise. Steve Sarkisian's been through some stuff in his life, man.
Right.
There's probably nothing you can say to him that he, that's going to scare him worse than being at the rock bottom he was in his life. Like if
at USC.
Yeah, like all that was really bad. So, he's got perspective is where Tom Herman didn't have it. And Tom Herman could maybe wind up at a place like Arizona State or Colorado and win, right? Yeah. Like he might be able to do that. I don't know, but because it's different than Texas.
I will be interested to see, like, once this is all said and done, and if they continue to climb, what are just the wholesale changes? What is the philosophy that he brought to change the sort of culture that we're seeing them looking like they want to play every day for him?
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, we make our picks. This is the big one, too, brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack on 365 Sports.